University officials have already invented new bathrooms, torn down all the old statues, put the old statues in the old bathrooms. So what is left? The prancing scholars at Leeds Trinity University in the United Kingdom have issued a new edict for professors. Don't use the word don't. And don't use capital letters for emphasis because they could traumatize sensitive students. It sounds crazy, but then this is the same country where Manchester University banned clapping. Kathy Aru is the founding publisher of Catalina magazine, and this show's liberal Sherpa. I would give her a round of applause, but Manchester University says we have to use jazz hands. So welcome, Kathy.
Thank you.
What's the defense of banning capital letters?
Netiquette. So etiquette for the internet. So it's netiquette. So it's being appropriate. So if you don't want to offend or hurt someone who's receiving your message, if you want to write what you mean and mean what you write, then you would want to not yell at that person. And it goes back to the 40s and the 70s where they said all caps means yelling. So by saying don't in all caps, you're yelling at a person.
Now, when they said that, that was on manual typewriters.
Typewriters, believe it or not. Back in the 40s, they said if I am, actually an author came out and said, if I'm using all caps, I am yelling. And then in the 70s, they said, if I use all caps, this is out of anger, this is rage. So now in the age of Twitter and social media, all caps is yelling.
Well, they've gone a bit far. No one said with a manual typewriter that you're traumatizing people if you're, you know, typing with the caps lock on.
No social media.
They say now that capital letters are traumatizing to these students. Kathy, you notice there it says Tucker Carlson in capital.
Oh my gosh,
you traumatized?
yes. Oh, well, he's yelling at me.
Is there a doctor in the house? Can we get someone in here? Tucker is traumatizing, but he'd be traumatizing in lowercase like K.D. Lang or E.
Signs are different. I mean, this is meant to just splash and come out at you, but when you're at your screen and this comes through to you at your screen, they're saying it causes anxiety.
No, but it doesn't.
And they don't want students to have anxiety.
And why does clapping cause anxiety?
Oh, well, clapping has nothing to do with netiquette. They're saying that some students might be upset with the loud sounds, maybe migraines.
Well, why doesn't this remind? If I had an audience, if I gave a speech and the audience all went, I'd think, my God, I'm in some 19th century minstrel show. Now I'm traumatized by the racism.
Right. Well, it seems so odd, but in 10 years and we go somewhere and everyone's doing this, it'll seem normal.
Yeah.
So,
well, hasta la vista, baby. Count me out if we.
Don't yell at me.
Okay, Kathy. I think that makes sense. Victor Davis Hanson is a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. He joins us. I won't insult you with my jazz hands. I won't traumatize you with my jazz hands, Victor. We all know, don't we, that people aren't really traumatized by jazz hands and capital letters, are they?
Yeah. No, I think what we do in the West now in the administrative state or the bureaucracy of the universities, we go after the misdemeanor that gives us a psychological sense we can do something because we can't address the felony. In this case, we have students that are not prepared or not doing well, so we say perhaps we can solve the problem by capital or not capital letters. And it's kind of like, it's a depressing moment though, Mark. It's kind of iconic. I mean, this generation in Britain, their great-grandfathers were going over the trenches at the Somme and Passchendaele to save Western civilization from the Second Reich. Their grandfathers were falling out of Spitfires during the Blitz to save us again from the Third Reich. Their fathers were helping to keep 300 Soviet divisions out of Europe and 7,000 nuclear weapons that were pointed at European cities. And this generation, at the same age and time in their life, is worried about capital letters, and I guess worried about whether they're unfriended at Facebook. And, you know, I've been my entire life in academia, and we used to think that British intellectual life was the hallmark of the Western world, and that whatever mistakes we made, we could look toward Britain. This was T.S. Eliot and C.S. Lewis and the Regius Professor of Greek at Oxford. And to think that they've fallen into the same sad political correctness that we have is really depressing. And maybe too many people are going to college. Or, you know, you think that we're losing this generation in the West that is worried about capital letters. They're not having children, they're not getting married, they're not buying homes, they're prolonging their adolescence, and maybe they shouldn't be in university, and they could be much better in noble professions like plumbing and electricity that we really need, trade schools. But something's gone wrong with the university, and it's not just pernicious to the student, but it's starting to affect the entire society at large.
To take it seriously for a moment, if you are seriously discombobulated by capital letters or applause, are you likely to be able to do any of the things you just mentioned there, like scramble over a trench in the Somme or get out of a troop carrier and wade ashore on the beaches of Normandy? In other words, is this where the last generation of functioning civilization ends up?
That's what I'm worried about, because we're demographically, as you've written about, we're not reproducing ourselves. We're not becoming adults in our 20s. Those are the best years of our lives. We're not buying homes, starting businesses. We have these Life of Julia, pajama boy 20-somethings that try to find offense at everything and play professional victims. And history hasn't stopped. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't like Western civilization, and they're existential enemies. And we need people in the night to protect us, and we have a few. We have, you know, in America, we have these great soldiers that do it, but we're not getting guidance, we're not getting courage, we're not getting independence and autonomy from the university. It's really sad, and we used to have that in both England and the United States.
You're right. That has certainly changed, Victor. Victor Davis Hanson, thank you. To turkeys. President Trump has